Hey everyone, it's MazzaOnMets. I'm your host, Evan Mazza here as we talk all things New York Mets baseball. Back for another episode, and well, the Mets got swept again. And it seems like a broken record here at this time, but the Mets once again got swept. So yeah, I gotta drink my tea before we talk about this show. Actually, it's hot water with lemon, but still gotta. This team again continues to, as this team continues to struggle, this team continues to lose ground. They're now 5.5 games behind the Philadelphia Phillies in the National League East. And again, contrast to where they were in early mid-June, they were 21 games over 500 and 5.5 up in the division. And now here we are in the middle of August, about 2 months later, and now this team is 18 and 31 their last several games. And now they're 5.5 back at the Phillies and only a game and a half up on the Cincinnati Reds for the third wild card spot. This team was also in the first wild card spot just a few weeks ago, and now they're only hanging on to the third wild card spot by a game and a half. So this is it. This is once again they got swept. For the third time in the last four series, they got swept, and they're now in the midst of a 7-game losing streak. Milwaukee Brewers came in there. They went into Milwaukee and they just got outplayed. They couldn't get the last strike. They couldn't get the big timely hit. They couldn't get the last out. Costly defensive errors on the infield again. So more questionable decisions from Carlos Mendoza. Uh, Again, and here we are. The team is now 1-11, or excuse me, 1-10 in their last 11 games. I think they've only won what, one or two games since since they made those acquisitions of Soto and Helsley and Mullins and Rogers. And look, all four have done fine. Mullins has actually been pretty good as a center fielder, and Helsley's done all right. He's had some rough outings, the last two outings, but he's overall been fine. Rogers has been really good. Soto's been good. But it's again the constant struggles with runners in scoring position. It's the starters not going deep into games. It's the bullpen having to be perfect for more than 3 or 4 innings. They have to go for five or even for six. It's the defense making costly errors and little mistakes here and there. So and that's where the Mets are right now. So and that's really, I think this series, especially Sunday, was really just showed you everything of this series. Really showed you where the Mets are right now, and Sunday really especially because they had a 5-0 lead on Sunday. But we'll get to Sunday's game. Friday, Kodai Senga took the mound for the Mets on Friday, and for 4 innings, he looked like his old self. For 4 innings, he looked like the Kodai Senga that we've seen in 2023 and most of this season before came back to the injured list. He looked like I said in the last show that really all he needs is like one good outing, like one. You know, I feel he's one of those pitchers that I think just needs one good outing to get back into the thick of things. And it looked like he was going to have that one good outing to really get him back on track. And through 4 innings, he pitched really well. And then the fifth inning, things things went awry. And that is a common theme. And this happened again on Sunday with Sean Manaea, but this is a common theme with the New York Mets. This has been a common theme. This with their starting pitching staff. One inning, just it's not just like they allow one run or two runs. No, it's spirals. The inning goes haywire, then the game goes haywire. Senga started off the game 4 innings. It was overall pretty solid through those 4 innings. And then the fifth inning, in the bottom of the fifth, he allows there was an error. He allowed there was a fielding error by Senga, and then Bryce Terang hit a 2-run homer, and that's an error led to a 2-run homer. This wouldn't be the first time in this series that a mistake by the Mets results the next pitcher batter later would be a home run. Senga doesn't field the ball on a little ground ball to him, and then Bryce Terang hits a 2-run homer to tie the game. And then with two outs, Wilson Contreras walks. Sal Frelick actually before that, Joey Ortiz walked. Sal Frelick reached on a catcher's interference. William Contreras walked, and that was it. They took out Senga with one out. So they took him out for I think Brooks Raley, who he then proceeds to hit Isaac Collins, and that gives Milwaukee the lead. and that would win the game right there. This 3-run fifth inning for the Brewers ends up being all they need to win the game, and that goes to the offense, and we'll get to that. But it's amazing how Senga, who looks so good in 4 innings, one mistake, his fielding error, one mistake, and he couldn't find a way out of it. He gives up a 2-run homer. He gives up another walk. There was, of course, a catch interference, like I said, by Alvarez. So that wasn't on Senga. That was on Alvarez. But again, a small mistake by someone from the infield or the pitcher themselves. A small mistake. And that leads to another run. Raley hits his batter that he saw, and that was it. The Mets got off to a quick 2-0 lead in this game to go to the offense. They got to a quick 2-0 lead in this game. Juan Soto had a very good series, homered for his 27th of the year. Starling Marte then followed that up in the top of the second with a home run. Marte had a pretty good series. But then after that, but again, 2 solo home runs. That's a very key thing right there. They're all solo homers. And the Mets have been the kings of hitting solo home runs, this year. But the Mets, other than those 2 solo homers, the Mets only had 4 guys on base. They went 1 for 2 runs scoring position. They didn't get anybody on base. They only had 4 hits, 2 home runs, and 4 hits. 2 of them were solo homers. That's it. The Mets offense did nothing for the majority of for the rest of the game, virtually until the very, very end, in the top of the ninth, where Starling Marte is on second base. He doubles. Now, you could argue, now he's the tying run. He gets a 2-out double. He's the tying run in the top of the ninth against Trevor McGill. He gets a 2-out double. Now you can make the argument that this is where Carlos Mendoza should have gone to his bench. And should have put in Tyrone Taylor as the pinch runner. He doesn't do that. Because again, Marte, while he's been a really good hitter and he's still a good base runner, again, his knees are banged up and surgeries and the quads and the groin. He's still relatively banged up. This is where you think and say, Mendoza should take out Tyrone Taylor, should take out Marte to put in Tyrone Taylor, give more speed. Well, McNeil hits a bloop single, and the center fielder, Perkins, plays really shallow. So it's gonna be a close one. And you want to have maybe a little more. Now, not to say Marte is not a good base runner, but you want a little more speed there. Tyrone Taylor's on the bench. And Blake Perkins makes a great play, great throw, and he's able to throw out Marte to end the game. Again, I'm not blaming Marte. I think Marte did what he could do, and McNeil got the base hit that should have tied the game. But I think that's where you kind of look at and say, why didn't Mendoza put in Tyrone Taylor, a faster runner, younger, of course, than Marte, and maybe he would have had a better chance of scoring there. And you would think maybe he would, be considering the Cleveland game, considering that. And again, right, what a contrast to the Cleveland game, right? With 1 out, and Tyrone Taylor on first, he goes to third on the base hit by Lindor, and Mike Sarbaugh holds him. But that was with 1 out. Like I said in the last show, that was with 1 out. If that was with 2 outs, I think he would have sent Tyrone Taylor. This was 2 outs, and Sarbaugh sent Marte. So again, I think that shows you that the reason why Sarbaugh held Tyrone Taylor there was because it was less than 2 outs, and you had Soto and Alonso and McNeil coming up. You had a man on second, 2 outs, and McNeil got a base hit, so you're obviously going to send them to see if you can tie the game here. So, but in the Cleveland game, Alvarez was the man on first. He got pinch run for Tyrone Taylor. You wondered why didn't Mendoza pinch ran Marte for Taylor? So he gets left on the bench. This is also where you miss Luis Angel Acuna off the bench. This is where you kind of miss him off the bench because his surefire speed, of course, would have been on there. But Marte got thrown at the plate, and the Mets lost a heartbreaking loss, another one, and another close loss, another heartbreaking loss where they could have won, but they didn't win because their offense couldn't hit, and starting pitching didn't go deep into the game. In this case, Senga pitched really well for 4 innings, and then faltered and then things went haywire in the 5th inning, and caused by a little mistake, right? His error led to a 2-run homer, and he couldn't get the last 2 outs after that. He couldn't get 3 outs after that. And then Brooks Raley came in, and then there was a catch interference from Francisco Alvarez. That's another small mistake. And then Brooks Raley came in, and he hit a guy. He hit Collins to score a run. That was another little mistake. So little mistakes, little mistakes, little mistakes, little mistakes, adding up to a 3-2 loss. And combined with your offense not hitting, all adds up to a 3-2 loss. The next game, Saturday, very interesting because the Mets did not start Frankie Montas in this game. Montas came out of the bullpen. Reed Garrett started this game, and just tells you where the Mets are with Frankie Montas at this point. Reed Garrett did all right in his one inning, but then Montas came in, 3 innings, 3 hits, only allowed 1 run, 2 walks, and 3 strikeouts. And the Mets again. This was a back and forth game. This was a back and forth game. The Mets got off to a quick 1-0 start, 1-0 lead with Pete Alonso hitting a home run, his 26th of the year, and tying Darryl Strawberry for the Mets single season home run record. Mets all time home run record. Sorry. But Alonso is now 1 home run away from being sole possession first place in the Mets all time home run list. So uh, obviously that'll be one of the big things, other than the Mets trying to get back to winning this week as the Mets come back home for 5 games, technically 5 games, because Sunday they'll be at Williamsport, Pennsylvania, they'll be the home team in that game for the Little League game. They'll be at Williamsport against playing the Seattle Mariners. But Pete Alonso will have 5 games at home: Tuesday, Thursday against Atlanta, Friday, Saturday against the Seattle Mariners to break the record at home. And regardless of how the Mets are doing right now, and obviously, yeah, the important thing right now is to see this team start winning baseball games again. It would be a really cool moment for Alonso to break the record at Citi Field. So break the record at Citi Field, home field. Gary Cohen's calling the game for SNY. Uh, Howie Rose calling the game for the Rio. So hopefully Pete can break the record in the 5 games he's got at Citi Field this week. So that would be a cool moment, of course. But back to the game itself. So Alonso gets the Mets on the board with a home run for a solo homer. And then the Brewers tack on 2 runs in the bottom of the second off Frankie Montas. Then the top of the third, the Mets tie the game off a Starling Marte home run. Again, Marte had a very good series in this one. The Mets then took the lead. I believe this was on a Cedric Mullins RBI single. Mullins hits an RBI single. The Mets get up to a 3-2 lead in this one. Bryce Terang, he then homers to tie the game 3-3. He homers off Frankie Montas. So Terang gets a home run to tie 3-3. Top of the fifth, Juan Soto hits another home run, his second home run of the series. He gives to give the Mets a 4-3 lead. Then we get to the bottom of the seventh. Ryan Stanek's on the mound, and Ryan Stanek, who has been very inconsistent. There have been moments where he's looked like the Stanek that they got last year and in the postseason, and there have been moments where he has been inconsistent. He's been wild. The fastball is just not clicking. The splitter is missing. And this was you got today, and on Saturday they got the bad Ryan Stanek. In the bottom of the seventh, let's see, Ryan Stanek gave up a base hit to Terang. He replaced Tyler Rogers, who was pretty good, who was good in his latest outing for the Mets. Stanek gives up a base hit. He then allows a double to Joey Ortiz. He then gets a ground out RBI to Sal Frelick to tie the game. Ryan Helsley comes in. He gives up a base hit to make it 5-4 Milwaukee. And then on what he thought was a catcher's interference call, what he thought was a flyout, turned out to be what he thought was a flyout from William Contreras, turned out to be a pitch clock violation. And then William Contreras hit a 2-run homer after that. So again, just little mistakes here and there from the Mets, little mistakes here and there, catcher's interference, an error, pitch clock violation. So these are the things that keep costing the Mets games. And again, it happened throughout this whole series. This was the case throughout this whole series. They just couldn't get any sort of consistent baseball. They just couldn't get any sort of consistent baseball throughout this whole series. So, and the Mets again, 7-4 Milwaukee, and that was it. That was the final score. The Mets didn't score another run after that, and that was it. So, again, a game where you were in there back and forth, but because of the lack of depth at this time, again, they were trying to do the pitch. They were trying to do the starter with Garrett and going Montez. You know, actually, the Isaac Collins base hit, I forgot, really was it was ruled a base hit, but it was really a playable ball for Ronnie Mauricio. A hard grounder to Ronnie Mauricio. It's a hard grounder, so obviously it would have been a tough play, but it is a play a third baseman should make, and it kind of just bounced off his glove, and it went in for an RBI, and it went in for a base hit to give the Brewers the lead. But again, sure, it was ruled a hit, but it was and not officially an error, but it was a playable ball for Ronnie Mauricio. So again, small mistakes. That's a play Mauricio should make. It's a hard hit ball, but that's a play Mauricio should make, and the Brewers, but he doesn't make it, and the Brewers take the lead. And again, maybe you could ask, why wasn't Brett Beatty playing third base in the late innings of the game? Because Brett Beatty's a better. It's interesting. Brett Beatty is a better third baseman defensively than he is a second baseman. Ronnie Mauricio is a better defensive second baseman than he is a third baseman. But Ronnie Mauricio has a great arm from third to first or from third to second. So, but again, you wonder maybe Brett Beatty should have been at third base because he's better defensively. But again, I'm not the manager. I'm not Carlos Mendoza. So, but that's how the Mets lose this game. Again, small mistakes. The offense, couple home runs, again, solo home runs, from Soto and from Marte and from Alonso. Solo home runs, on 8 hits. So again, the offense gets 4 runs, but again, 3 of them were on solo home runs. The Mets overall won 1 4-run scrimmages and they have 7 guys on base. And then Sunday. And this was the game we go, man, because they were up 5-0 in this game. 5-0 in this game early, 2 runs in the first, a run in the second, a run in the third, a run in the fourth, and a run in the fifth. They're up 5-0 going to the bottom of the fourth. Sean Manaea is pitching, and he looks good through 3 innings. He looks pretty darn good through 3 innings. And then in the fourth inning, things go haywire. Again, it's so weird and puzzling why this is happening with the Mets starting pitching, but why the Mets starting pitchers are consistently having these innings where things just go haywire. And it's not just one run allowed, 2 runs allowed, 3 runs allowed. So it's not like anything like that. It's they give up 3, they give up 4, they give up 5. And it's like how? And the inning starts off in the bottom of the fourth, starts off with a home run by William Contreras, who had a big day in this game. He had 2 home runs, 3 home runs in this series from Contreras. He hits a home run, and then Javon gets a base hit, and then Monasterio grounds into a force out, and then Danny Jansen doubles in a run. Then Danny Jansen doubles in, Lockridge walks, Joey Ortiz gets a base hit. It's 5-3. Just like that, 5-0 lead turns in the bottom of the fourth. All of a sudden, it's now 5-3. It's a ball game. Why? Because Manaea Manaea wasn't able to just kind of take advantage of the 5-0 lead and cruise and give the Mets longevity, give the Mets some length, 5 innings, 6 innings, maybe even 7, 5, 6, maybe even 7 innings, something like that. But he wasn't able to. He gets hit up in the fourth, and then in the bottom of the fifth, he gives up 1 base hit. He's at 80 plus pitches. He gives up a base hit to Isaac Collins, and that's it. He goes 4 plus, and Reed Garrett comes in. He immediately gives up a 2-run homer to William Contreras. His second homer of the day, his third of the series, and the Mets lead is all of a sudden 6-5. What was once a 5-0 lead, and was once a 5-0 lead and then a 6-3 lead, it's now 6-5. It's now 6-5, and you just knew that the Mets are not going to win this game. You just knew. Manaea in this one went 4 innings plus 5 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. The ERA is now 4.33. So, and then the bottom of the eighth, right? And then the bottom of the eighth, Ryan Helsley. In the bottom of the eighth, Ryan Helsley gives up a run. And then the bottom of the ninth, Edwin Diaz gives up a walk-off home run. The Mets lose a game they should have won. You're up 5-0. You're up 6-3. That's a game you should win. And Milwaukee's a great team. They're tough. It's in their ballpark, but that's a game you got to win. 5-0 and 6-3. That's a game you got to win. But they didn't because starting pitching couldn't go deep into the game. Your bullpen's got to be perfect. Garrett gives up a 2-run homer. Helsley gives up a run. and Diaz gives up a walk-off homer. But your bullpen has to be perfect from the fifth inning onwards because Manaea can't go deep. Manaea struggled after his first three innings were pretty good. You know, it's the little things. It's little things. And the Mets offense had a good day, 6 runs, 10 hits, but even their offense, no runs from the sixth inning to the ninth. After those first 5 innings, where they scored 6 runs, nothing after that. Nothing. Can't I'm not gonna put much blame on them, but still, no runs after that. So as the Brewers were chipping away and coming back, the Mets weren't able to score. So after that, once it became a 6-5 game. So not blaming it all on the offense at all, but but even still, they're not able to keep coming and keep scoring some runs, extend the lead, right? So in the top of the first, to recap some of the Mets scoring, Juan Soto, RBI single. Again, he had a very good series in this series. That made it 1-0. Brett Baty hit a home run. That made it 3-0 Mets. That made it 3-0 Mets. Jeff McNeil in the top of the first hit an RBI single to make it 2-0 Mets. In the top of the third, Pete Alonso doubled, and then Ronnie Mauricio drove him in with an RBI base hit. And then Cedric Mullins, he hit his first home run as a Met to make it 5-0 Mets. And then after the Brewers scored through those 3 runs to make it 5-3, Pete Alonso hit an RBI double to make it 6-3. But that was with 1 out in the top of the fifth. After that, the Mets didn't score again. So, this was a game that you needed to win. You needed to win this game, not just coming in, but especially when you're up 5-0, 5-0 and 6-3. That's a game you got to win. You got to win that game, and they weren't able to. In the bottom of the eighth, when it was 6-5, in the bottom of the eighth, Tyler Rogers Ryan Helsley came in. He walked Bryce Terang. He got Danny Jansen with 1 out, base hit. And then he struck out Brandon Lockridge, who even with the strikeout, that was, was it a 10-pitch at bat? That was a 8-pitch at bat in that one. And then Joey Ortiz got a base hit just by the first baseline and just went off Alonso's glove down the first baseline. Would have been a tough play for Pete, but that bounced off his glove and that tied the game. And then the bottom of the ninth, and then Edwin Diaz came in to get the last out in the bottom of the eighth. And then the bottom of the ninth, he allows a walk-off homer to Isaac Collins. But again, this was one of those games. The Mets went 4 for 9 runs scoring position. 4 for 9 runs scoring position. So this was again one of the Mets' better games from scoring position. But to recap just this whole series and this game overall, just not able to, it's like in the NFL, right? Or in football, just in football in general, right? You got to lead. It's 5 minutes left in the game, 6 minutes left in the game, 4 minutes left in the game, whatever it is. And what do you do in those, and when you have a lead with 4 or 5 minutes left in the game in football? Well, you run the football, you run the clock, right? You run the football, you grind it out, and you try to, you try to win the game there, right? You get enough first downs to win the game, right? Or your defense has to make a big stop, right? The Mets have not been able to, during a lot of this 18 to 31 stretch that they've been on since the middle of June. This is where most of their games have been. They've not been able to get the big timely hit, get the big strikeout, get the big out, get the last strike, whatever. They've not been able to win the games in the later innings, and that's where you need to win baseball games. You need to win postseason games, right? You win it in the late innings, right? It's like in football. You win a game in the fourth quarter, right? You win a game in the fourth quarter with your offense controlling the football, your defense making key stops. That's how you win football games. In baseball, you win in the late innings with timely hits, clutch hitting, good pitching, getting the last out, getting the last strike, making good defensive plays. Your manager makes good decision makings, stuff like that. But the Mets in the late innings of baseball games during these last 2 months have not been able to do that. And that's why That's why they are where they are right now. That's why they're 5.5 back of the Phillies right now. That's why they're only a game and a half up on the Cincinnati Reds. So, so as they continue to play like this, as they continue to play like this, all of a sudden it's not just now you might not win the division. Now it's you might not even win the wild card, and you might not even make the playoffs. And boy, if the Mets don't make the playoffs this year, I think Steve Cohen is not going to be a happy camper. And I think everybody then is on the hot seat, from the manager to the coaches, even the GM to the players. You know, I think if the Mets miss the playoffs this year, everyone's going to be on the hot seat in Steve Cohen's mind because he's not going to be happy, because you see it from the fan base. They ain't, like I said last week, they're not happy. This is not a happy fan base right now. And the Mets are coming back home after just getting swept by Milwaukee and after losing 7 in a row, losing 2 out of 3 to the Giants, getting swept by San Diego before that, getting swept by Cleveland, getting swept by Milwaukee. And now you face the Braves this week, who, yeah, they're not playing their best baseball. They haven't played their best baseball all season long. They have really struggled all season long, but this is still a team that historically has owned you. They've owned the Mets. So, so if the Mets, so now's a good time for the Mets to break out of this, to break out of getting beat by the Braves all the time. But the Braves own the Mets. They own them. So, and Seattle's playing hard, and they're playing for a playoff spot right now when they face them this weekend. So things for this team need to, I don't want to say get in order, but and I'm going to sound cliche by saying they need to play better baseball, but that's really it. They just need to play better baseball, and I've been saying that for the last, I've been saying that for the last several of these shows that we've done here. I've been saying that for the last several shows now. This team just needs to play better baseball. I know that's cliche, and I know that's a very easy thing, but I know that's a very simple thing, but it's really that simple. Do I think the Mets are as bad as they played over the last 2 months? Honestly, no, but sometimes, but you just need, but in order for the Mets to snap out of this, you just got to play better baseball. There's no excuse with a lineup with Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo and Vientos and Pete Alonso and all those guys and Francisco Alvarez and Starling Marte and now Cedric Mullins to hit this poorly runs the scoring position. Can guys get on base when one of these guys hit a home run? There's no reason for the starting pitching staff, aside from one guy, to not go deep into games. David Peterson. There's no reason for this infield, and even guys like Francisco Lindor, who made a key error on Saturday's loss, and you saw him slamming his glove after the error. You saw him slamming his glove in the dugout. There's no excuse for the guys on the infield to continuously make mistakes the way they've been making. There's no excuse for a move like Carlos Mendoza not putting in Tyrone Taylor to run for Starling Marte when you made that move exactly for him the other day. The other day. Heck, I would say there's no reason for Carlos Mendoza not to bring in Edwin Diaz for a 6-out save yesterday on Sunday. You have a day off on Monday, right? Ryan Helsley was just used on Saturday, right? This is the must-win game. You have to win this game. You've lost 6 in a row. It's August now. It's August now. This is where you go up to Edwin and go, dude, give me 6 outs. Right? I know Edwin gave up the walk-off homer, but I think yesterday was one of those games where Mendoza should have went up to Diaz and said, I need 6 outs from you. If the game is close or up by 1 or 2 or 3 going to the 8th inning, or 4 or even 4 runs, I think that's where you go to Edwin Diaz and go, give me 6 outs because we need a win. And you're my best reliever, and you're my closer. You're my best reliever. You might be my best pitcher overall. That's I think where you should go up to Diaz, especially with Helsley already pitching the day before that. That's where you go up to Diaz and go, I need 6 outs from you. I know Buck Showalter certainly would have gone up to Diaz in a game like yesterday and said, I need 6 outs from you today. You're going to be pitching the 8th inning. But Mendoza didn't do that. He went with Helsley again, the 8th, He went with Helsley again in the eighth, and then when the game was tied, that's when he finally went to Diaz. So even if Diaz didn't close the game, even if Diaz got the 3 outs and then I think the sent extra innings, would have pitched the 10th for the Mets. Who would have pitched the 10th? I guess Gregory Soto would have been the guy. I think maybe I don't know, but it definitely wasn't going to be Diaz. So it's just thing. It's just little thing after little thing after little thing after little thing, and they're just not playing good baseball. Add that up, and you add that up, and they're 18-31 in the middle of since the middle of June. You add that up, and they're 5.5 back at the Phillies, and now only a game and a half up on the Cincinnati Reds. And the Phillies and Reds actually play each other this week. So if you're the Mets, if you want to win the division, you root for the Reds. If you want to get a wild card spot, you root for the Phillies. So, but but you can't. But you can't scoreboard watch right now if you're the Mets or if you're a Met fan. You can't scoreboard watch right now. It's about just hoping the Mets can turn this thing around because it's about the Mets winning baseball games right now. It's about the Mets winning baseball games. So, in other news, the Mets in the minor leagues, the Mets actually, I'll give my quick opinion on what the Mets I think can do right now. Because obviously with the trades and everything, there's nothing really left. They're not going to, with the trades already, with the trades already, and already being August, there's no coaching changes that's going to be made. The only thing that I think they could do, and this is my opinion, Juan Soto should bat leadoff because right now Lindor ain't hitting to justify him batting leadoff, and Brandon Nimmo is striking out like crazy. So is Lindor, but both of them are not hitting particularly well right now to say that they should bat leadoff. So the guy who should be batting leadoff is the guy who's been getting on base, Juan Soto. And how you go from there, we'll see. But right now, I think Juan Soto should be the one batting leadoff, and Lindor and Nimmo should be a little down more in the order, maybe third, fourth in the order. They had Brandon Nimmo batting third, I think, on Saturday. They had Brandon Nimmo batting third or fourth. And actually, yeah, I think it was Saturday. I think it was Saturday's game or Sunday's game. Excuse me, it was Sunday's game. Top of the ninth. Top of the ninth. 2 outs. Nobody on. Juan Soto bats. Tie game. They pitched around Soto because Soto had a really good series. They pitched around him to face Brandon Nimmo. He walked to face Nimmo because Nimmo had been really struggling. And Nimmo, I think, flew out to left field. So that was yesterday's game. That was yesterday's game. And they had Nimmo batting third. I don't know how. Again, that's another weird decision making by. And I know lineup stuff can be a bit. Some might think it's the GM. Some might think it's the manager. Sometimes it's based off analytics. But it was very odd. No matter who the decision was, whether it's Mendoza or the analytics team or Stearns, it's very odd to have Nimmo, who's striking out a lot recently, and he's struggling to bat third. So but right now, I do think Juan Soto needs to bat leadoff, and Nimmo and Lindor need to be moved a little bit down the order until they start hitting again. So, and then of course, Sproat and McClain need to be called up. Talking about the minor leagues, Sproat and McClain, I think, have to be called up. I think they got to be called up. So, but in other minor league news for the Mets, Carson Bench, Ryan Clifford, Jonah Tong, and Jet Williams are all been called up to AAA Syracuse. So that's cool to see. The Mets love Carson Bench. They love him. And he's a David Stearns guy. He was a guy that was drafted by David Stearns. I think the Mets see him as the starting center fielder within maybe next year even. So, although I'd like to see the Mets resign Cedric Mullins. I think Mullins has done a decent. I think Mullins has done a good job since he was traded to the Mets. And that's another thing. I think the Mets should think about Mullins. This is why I like getting Cedric Mullins. Because Mullins you can put anywhere. You can put him at the top of the order, the middle of the order, the bottom of the order. Right now they have him at the bottom of the order. I would put him in. I'd start to move him up a bit. I'd start to move Mullins up in the maybe towards the middle of the order, 5, 6, 7, something like that. Right now he's in the 8, 9 spot. I would think about moving him up a bit. Again, you got your current, Nimmo's struggling, Lindor's struggling, so I would think about maybe moving Mullins up in the order a bit. So, but back to the minors, yeah, Jonah Tong, I expect him to get called up sometime next year. Like I said, Benj could be the starting center fielder. We'll see next year. But I would resign Cedric Mullins. They like Jet Williams a lot, but Benj and Jonah Tong, those are going to be the guys to look to watch next in AAA Syracuse. So, but it's cool to see them getting called up, and I expect Sprode and McLean to be called up. At least I think. You know, at least I think Sprode and McLean or one of them will be called up pretty soon. So, because the Mets need it right, especially if you're doing what you're doing with Frankie Montez right now, where he's not even starting, he's coming out of the bullpen. You, Sproat and McLean have got to come up now. If that's what you're doing with Montez, then Sproat and McLean have got to be called up. So it's really amazing when you think about the Mets starting pitching. And again, we could talk about the Mets starting pitching this whole show because that's really what it's one of their biggest things right now, along with not hitting run scoring position. It's really amazing. Griffin Canning's injury has really, really thrown a wrench. Like Griffin Canning was so good for the Mets this year. I know he hit a bit of a bump in recent outings, but overall he was pretty good. Like Griffin Canning was really that Luis Severino of last year, Sean Manaea of last year, where you just didn't expect much, but he was pitching so well that I was like, wow. And then he tore his Achilles, and that has really affected the Mets starting rotation. Losing him really affected them. It really hurt their starting rotation. So, who would have thought? Who would have thought Griffin Canning would have that big of an impact on the Mets starting pitching rotation? Who would have thought at the beginning of the season going to spring training? So, but having said that, Jonathan, Sprode, and McLean are all in AAA. So, now we got to talk about the Mets series with the Atlanta Braves. The Braves come in, the Braves and the Mets. Actually, the Phillies. We'll talk about the series of the Phillies and the Reds. The Phillies and the Reds, they played today. They play later tonight. Again, if you want the Mets to win the division, root for the Reds. If you want the Mets to get a wild card spot and just get into the playoffs, root for the Phillies. But Mets play the Braves this week again. Spencer Strider will take them out on Tuesday night for Atlanta against Clay Holmes. Wednesday, David Peterson will take them out for the Mets against Carlos Carrasco. So that's pretty cool against Carlos Carrasco. I always like Carlos Carrasco. I've always been a fan of his. It's pretty cool to see him, get a spot on a roster. So they'll face their old friend Carlos Carrasco on Wednesday night, and Bryce Elder takes them out for the Braves against Kodai Senga on Thursday night. So again, Holmes, Peterson, Senga, they are the keys in this series. They are the keys in this series. Each and every single one of them have got to give the Mets a good outing. They've got to give the Mets a good quality outing. These three guys are the keys in this series. You've got to give the Mets some quality innings. You got to. So, and of course, for the Mets offenses, again, try score runs in scoring position. I would like to see some new lineup formations to see what maybe the Mets, like I said, I want to see Juan Soto batting leadoff. But Holmes, Senga, and Peterson, or Holmes, Peterson, Senga. You need all three of them to go out there and give you good outings. You need all three of them to go out there and give you good outings. So that's the key in this series for the Mets. Going to come out with a Mazzon Ravens later tonight or tomorrow to recap the Mets, to recap the Ravens preseason opener against the Indianapolis Colts. Lots to talk about that one, including the Ravens running backs. Then later in the week, we'll talk about the Jets preseason opener, their win against the Green Bay Packers on Mazzon Jets. But for MazzaOnMets, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Thank you guys very much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Please give this video a like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you guys on Thursday to recap the Mets series of the Braves, and to preview this series with the Seattle Mariners. And Sunday, talk about the Little League Classic, as the Mets go to Williamsport to play the Mariners. That's always a lot of fun. Always pretty cool. But thank you guys very much for tuning in. Have yourselves a great day, and let's go Mets.